and Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we have a very special guest with us, Cody McBroom, the CEO of Tailored Coaching Method. And so we would really appreciate if you could give a little intro about you and a little background for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me on. I'm excited to share my story, spit some knowledge and podcast with you guys. But my story in a nutshell is pretty simple. I grew up the chubby kid. I was never obese or anything, but I grew up the chubby kid and didn't touch a weight until after high school when I realized I had nothing to do and I was really insecure and lacked confidence and athleticism and was just ready to kind of create a change and remove bad habits and build some new ones. And I kind of started going down the fat loss path, like most people, trying everything you see in a magazine or on a tabloid or anything like that you can just get your hands on, usually fads, and none of it really worked or stuck with me. And as I started trying to educate myself and network and learn from people with more experience and good coaching guidance, I ended up running into somebody at the college and wanted to change my degree and get into fitness and all that stuff. And naturally, my parents said no because I was still chubby, didn't really know how to lift weights, and it was kind of random. So I did what I would do at 18, and I forged my dad's signature and changed my degree and started my my mission towards being a trainer. And I did that. And so eventually they found out and they accepted it because it was too late at that point. But I really just engulfed myself in the craft of training and just became obsessed with it, to be honest with you. And I eventually went through school, did some internships, got an internship at a strength facility, which later became my job. They hired me, and then I did a bodybuilding show, which got me into nutrition because I realized how valuable nutrition was in the actual process of getting lean, and started furthering my education, going the route of becoming a sports nutritionist. And that led to certification after workshop, after all kinds of different education pathways. And eventually I decided to leave the gym. I gave up 100% of my clientele and paycheck to start Tailored Coaching Method, which at the time was Boom Boom Performance. But as I started hiring people, I realized that my nickname, Cody Boom Boom McBroom, one, didn't make any sense or relate to fitness whatsoever. And two, it was kind of a self-centered name when Tailored Coaching Method is so much more than me. And so we rebranded as we were building the team, and that's kind of where we're at now. So we have a facility here in Washington State. We are an online fitness and nutrition coaching company. I also own an app called the Tailored Trainer, which is a workout app. And we just started an apparel company called Tailored Life Apparel, which launches next month. So a lot going on. We have a team of 12 now, and we are growing, and we spend every day of our lives creating content and coaching people, really.
That's awesome. And I did not know that the company was originally called Boom Boom Coaching, which is awesome. I know mine used to be Marissa Roy Fitness, which we rebranded because same reasons. And so I think that that's really powerful, but it's funny to know like the origin story of everything. But that's awesome. And I think something that like we really wanted to talk to you today about, that I think you really are, I guess, a standout in at least like my frame of view of like, you know, the fitness people that I follow and the echo chamber that I'm in. But and everybody that I've kind of seen, what you really do well is you preach just living this lifestyle year round, and you keep a lean physique year round. With, you know, you probably also do like bulks and cuts and things within that, but generally speaking, you have a lean physique year round. And I think that that's something that people tend to like not even believe is attainable. I think because of kind of the bodybuilding cyclic nature of like off season, in season, dieting, bulking, and kind of people making those things out to be something that they're not, when really all we're trying to do is just live a healthy lifestyle and have a body that we're confident in and we're proud of. So I'm curious, like in your background and your journey, you probably went through a lot of that cyclic with bodybuilding, bulking, dieting, all of that. So what kind of brought you to where you are now, with where you do stay lean year round and just kind of live that lifestyle year round and stay disciplined year round as well?
Yeah, I definitely went through the ups and downs with it. And, you know, I mean, it started with, for me, when I first got into fitness in general, I was just trying to lose weight because I was overweight. So I wanted to lose weight. And a lot of people don't realize this, but I actually lost about 45 to 50 pounds when I first started my journey. And what really kind of shed light on this whole idea to me is that in my mind, you know, and this is going to date this back because this is pre-Instagram, all that stuff, but like, I'm thinking Mark Wahlberg cover of Men's Health. Like, I'm going to lose weight and that's what I'll end up looking like, right? Naturally, I'll just already have all this muscle. And I lose weight and then I was just like skinny fat. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? Right. I was doing the high intensity cardio. I was following the diet, doing all those things. And what I did wrong was I didn't actually prioritize maintaining or building any muscle. So I think there's value in knowing that there are times where you have to prioritize building muscle versus staying lean or getting leaner. At that time, I just prioritized weight loss. And that's another aspect of it, not fat loss, weight loss. And they are two different things. So once I went through that, I had to go through some kind of gaining phase. At the time, I was still new, so I was easily able to put on muscle without gaining fat. And I think that's something that people should take advantage of when they're early in their lifting career. If your goal is to sustain a lean physique, most of the time, lean physique implies that you also have muscle, right? Whether you're a male or female, you have muscle tissue. It doesn't mean you're jacked or huge. It just means that when you get lean, you look dense, you look athletic. For some of the women listening, toned, right? We look that way. And in order to do that, you have to either recomp or build muscle while you're losing fat if you're new, or take time to build muscle instead of losing fat. So just to kind of give some context there, but why I think I'm able to stay here now today is because I understand what my genetic potential is and where, from a muscle perspective, and where I actually want to sit. So I could easily, if I really wanted to, like if I was a competitive bodybuilder, I would go through bulks and cuts, and I probably could put on another 10 to 20 pounds of muscle if I really wanted to. I just don't care that much. I don't have a desire to be massive. Like, I already have to buy pants that are 2 sizes too big around my waist because everything you buy is skinny jeans now, and then they're strangling my thighs. And like, literally it's a problem. And I'm not huge. So I can't imagine being any bigger. And when I think of like myself and the look I want, the feeling I want, some athleticism, like, this is where I like to sit. And me getting to this place didn't always necessarily mean just staying lean all the time. I did have to go through periods of time of at least maintenance calories to where I wasn't trying to lose fat and putting my body in a stressful situation, as well as times where I was intentionally gaining weight. I've done it the right way and I've done it the wrong way. I've gained too much weight too fast because I was just eating more calories and training hard and just watching the scale go up. And it feels productive at first when you see the scale go up, and then you realize that you just got too much fat on you and you're not happy anyway. Then you cut, and a lot of times you remove some of the good weight you gained too. And then I've done it the right way where I just intentionally didn't try to lose any body fat for a full year. And this was in 2018 to 2019. So not too long ago, this few years ago. I really spent a lot of time staying at maintenance or a slight surplus and just what I would call lean gaining. And it was a period of time where I knew I needed to not go into a deficit. I needed to just focus on stress management, building the business. My daughter was going through kidney surgery at the time, so I had no business getting into a deficit at all because that's another applied stress. And I just focused on building muscle, and it was very slow. It was a very, very slow process. But I gained 16 pounds, and I cut off about 4 or 5 of that afterwards. And that was a 12-month period of time. So when I say 16 pounds, people are like, holy shit, that's a lot of weight. But when you're doing it at barely a pound a month, it's a quarter of a pound a week. Like, you don't really even notice it. It's just committing to a long period of time of being really healthy and pushing your training slowly but surely and just managing recovery. And that allowed me to do that and then shave off some weight afterwards and get to a place where I was pretty damn lean. I still saw a lot of muscle, but I was healthy. My testosterone, my cortisol, all my hormones were in a good place. I wasn't in super low calories. And I think that's ultimately how you accomplish a lean physique. Now, the last couple of things I'll say there is number one, I might have more muscle than the person listening to this who's been at it for a year or two and wants what I'm talking about. So if you're brand new, you might need more time. I've been lifting for 12 years. So like, there is a lot of years of building muscle in this too. And then the other side of it is patience. Like I'm been doing this. I'm clearly committed, and I still had to take a full year to just focus on that one thing. And a lot of people don't want to do that. If they're not super happy with where they're at, they're not going to want to spend a full year not losing any body fat to get to a potential place in a year or two that looks even better. But that's really what you have to commit to, because the only way to lose body fat and have a body that you are excited about, you are confident with, it's going to require a phase of time where you're not trying to diet all the time, because you got to put some muscle on to get there in most circumstances. So, very long-winded answer, but I think there's layers to it, and it's not as simple as some people would say, well, just go to maintenance and, or like carb cycles. You have high days and low days, and you can burn fat on some days and build muscle on some days, which is not really the case because the weekly average doesn't pan out that way. But point being is it really is a long-term periodized or planned out approach that leads to that.
So I was just thinking, obviously we're all coaches, like how do you sell that to a client? Because that is super unsexy to hear. Like, oh, you want to lose weight, you want to lose fat. Well, we're actually not going to do that. And we're just going to put on a little bit of weight, specifically for our female clientele.
Mm-hmm. So, and we predominantly work with women too. And you guys know this because you were at the event that I spoke at, and I've spoken at multiple business events like that. I'm always kind of like, not in a bad way, but I'm always the black sheep at those events, because I'm like the one guy that doesn't use any quick fix sales tactics of any kind whatsoever. And I'm always just like, to me, transparency and honesty wins. And we've ran surveys for people that have worked with us, and the most common answer is every single person that comes to us has tried dieting for at least 2 years. Usually it's 3 or 4 years. And because of that, I can kind of play on their emotions, and I can just, let's go back on a history lesson. Like, what have you tried in the past? And we can kind of go through everything that did not work. And every single one of them was too short, was too quick, was high expectations, low commitment. At the end of the day, what they've done up to this point hasn't gotten them where they want to be. And that's why they're on the phone with me. Right. And then I can tell them, well, unfortunately, the path that you want is the path that, or the goal that you want is, it requires the path that you're avoiding because it's more difficult and it takes more time. Now, convincing somebody into that, to me, is there's 2 parts of it. Number one, I'm big on science. You guys know this. So like breaking down some different scientific aspects of it. So the reality of, being able to sustain a lean physique, like what does that require? I know like you guys put it in the topics, but like resetting your body fat set point, body recomposition, like what's the science behind all this stuff? What does periodization look like? And when you see a before and after of a reverse diet or a recomp, is it really like a 2-month recomp, or is it an 8-month recomp where they went through a bulk and a cut? Because I have tons of recomp transformations like that, but people don't realize how far apart they are most of the time. And then, I also try to really harp on the fact that inside of the science on this stuff, like it's still such a small fraction of your life. Like I think I did this post one time, and it was like, I Googled basically the average lifespan. It was like 79 years, which healthy individuals like us and people listen, I hope we all live longer than that, but that's the average, right? So if you take 1 year of that, I believe it's less than 1%. It's like 0.7 or 0.8% of your life. So if you could spend 12 months committed to an intelligent, planned out, well thought out plan for your training and nutrition to do this goal, you literally are spending less than 1% of your entire life to accomplish the body of your dreams, or the physique you want to live your days in. You only get one of them. So explaining it to them that way kind of opens their eyes to be like, you know what, it really isn't that big of a commitment. And the other side of that too is you can even look at them and go, okay, so like what diets have you tried in the past? How long were each of those diets? Let's say they were all between 1 and 3 months. Let's add up all the time and money and effort and energy wasted on those diets that didn't get you anywhere or got you somewhere, and then you rebounded back to where you're at. Just add that up. I guarantee that was more time you spent banging your head against the wall than just committing to the time I'm going to show you right now. That is going to work. It's going to be a slower process, but now we're not yo-yoing, and then it's just, telling them that and then showing them, where do you want to be? Like, let's actually visualize that end place instead of focusing on the process so much. Like, look at the end goal. Like, where do you want your physique to be, and envision that? Because I think a lot of people fail to realize the psychology behind goal setting and achieving success how much of a tie-in there is to visualizing that goal, visualizing yourself in that body, visualizing yourself running that business, visualizing yourself with that relationship or with those responsibilities, or driving the car or having the house, whatever the thing is. They've even done studies for powerlifting. Visualizing yourself lifting that weight before you lift it is going to increase the likelihood of you lifting it. And they've done this multiple times. So helping them visualize it, because a lot of times they can't do it on their own. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. I love I actually used that analogy. It just kind of like came out in conversation one day in one of our like group client calls that I had. Basically one of the clients was like, man, I feel like I've gotten nowhere and it's been this many months or whatever. And they were just kind of down on themselves. And I said the same thing. I was like, this is like, first of all, this group of people that are dedicated to their health and their fitness, like you feel behind, but you're in a group of people that are all actively pursuing their health and their well-being. Like we are the anomaly. This is not normal.
Yeah.
So think of that. Like you are actually so much farther ahead than you think just by being in this room. And then second, like really, even if the goal took you this much longer, what is that in comparison to your whole life? And she was just like, my mind's fucking blown. And it was great. But I did want to actually, you made me think of something. I had a conversation with my now husband, which is still weird to say. It's been like 2 months. But we were talking about like the difference between people who have like side-by-side photos. You see them all the time on Instagram, before and after. And it's like, there's the ones that basically just look like someone lost a bunch of bloating and some inches off their waist, but otherwise their body is completely the same shape, versus the ones where you look at it and you're like, that's not real. That's a totally different body. That's a different person. I believe I have one of those because I was a stick about 7 or 8 years ago, and I've put on a lot of muscle and I have completely transformed my physique. And the key to that is, what's the difference between those people that just look like they shrunk versus the ones that completely look like they've changed and they have their dream body and they love where they're at. And I really do believe it's that commitment to the process of the years and years and years. Because, if I ask you, Cody, how long did it take you from losing those 50 pounds at the very, very beginning of your journey of being skinny fat to now being where you are today? Sounds like at least 12 years later. Like it's the commitment to the lifestyle and the process of being in this journey for life, rather than being in it for the results of this many pounds. Because you could lose 50 pounds in a few months if you really tried and just crash dieted, but like is that really what people are looking for? And I think how you described it is perfect. You lose the weight, you think you're going to look like the cover of a magazine, but really it's like there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, and I don't want people to hear like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to commit to 12 years before I get to this, but like, cause I think I did my first competition on stage, 3 years into it, 4 years into training, so I clearly have a lot more muscle now than I did, but I got absolutely shredded. So it's not to say that you can't have an impressive physique after just a few years, but it does, like, it just gets better. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like wine. It does age better as you stay committed to it. But I think that ultimately the most difficult part is like you said, when we see like these transformations that are done over a month, 3 months, and it's just a matter of somebody went from being big to being small. There's not really added definition. There's not added health or vibrance. There's not density to the person. Most people want that. Even women listening who just focus solely on the scale, those individuals, like when you really think about the physique you want, and I've had women say this to me all the time, like, I don't want to build muscle. I don't want to do that. I want to lose weight. Kind of like this person. They'll send me a picture and I'm like, that woman has a lot of muscle. Like, I promise you have no idea how much that lady weighs. And I tell people all the time, like, do you walk into the grocery store with a name tag that has your weight on it? No. Okay, then who cares? Nobody gives a shit what you weigh. And I've had so many conversations where I've had to like pull up people's progress pictures and show them, like, look how much leaner you are. You're 2 pounds heavier here because you've built muscle. Because sometimes that is what is required, and they look leaner with more muscle because 2 pounds of muscle spread across your whole physique, it's really not that much. Like, kind of a weird analogy, but if you take 2 pounds of steak and you just spread it across your whole body, it's not going to be that much. It's not that thick of a layer. but that replacing fat is going to be a huge difference, you know? And so you're going to look a lot leaner, and the more fat and subcutaneous layer of your skin you pull down, because you're getting leaner and leaner and leaner, the more you're going to see dense muscle underneath. And if you have no dense muscle underneath, you're not going to get the image in your head that you want. And the last thing I'll say here that's super empowering for women is, and I've had a client do this and it changed everything for her. I told her, because she was going through a transformation, she wasn't losing any weight, but she clearly looked different. I was like, next time somebody tells you that you look amazing and asks what you're doing, tell them, thank you. I've been dieting and training really hard and I've gained 5 pounds. And just see what they say, because they will be in shock. And more people need to hear that it's not just about weight. Sometimes people should lose weight. A lot of times, recomposition, all these different things, weight has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to use that trick for sure, because people will be like, what? And when Christina gets back, for those who are listening to this and not watching on YouTube, Christina had to go run for the baby, but we'll continue. She actually has a client where I know she could use this for sure. But yeah, and also too, like, I think when it comes to staying, like if we harp on the topic, staying lean year round, really, I think what adding muscle does to the physique as well is it just makes it easier to look leaner at a higher body fat percentage. And that's what I've noticed with myself, is just like, I hate saying it this way, but I can kind of get away with more at this point. Like, I'm just in a place like now 7 years into lifting, I've actually, just for like context sake, made a shift into CrossFit just because I wanted to try something new. I'm having a ton of fun with it. But I'm also in a place where I don't really care to change my body composition or the way that I look, because I'm just happy with where it is. And so that's when I think people get mistaken for someone who's in my position. I try to talk about this all the time, because I'm very careful about not portraying like I'm doing CrossFit and that's the way that I got this physique, because it's not. I lifted like a bro for 7 years and tried to build as much muscle as possible, tried to get jacked to get the physique that I have now. I'm maintaining my conditioning and my body composition just by doing a lot of output with CrossFit. And so I really try to just distinguish that. And it's like, this is not how I built the body that I have. This is how I'm maintaining it. But I think a lot of times you see, like, I'll use the Fitspo example of like swipe circuits on Instagram and, you know, body weight, kickback bullshit stuff. And they're like, this is how you build a booty, but you go scroll all the way down on this person's profile and they competed 10 years ago and they have built all this muscle and they used to lift, you know, just with progressive overload, the classic way. And they're marketing something that people are buying into to change their body that is not going to work for them at all. And so I think sometimes just having that conversation of like, this is actually how that worked, is so important to like shed light on how do you get the physique that you want and then keep it. How you can keep it is very different than how you get there. So that's kind of my personal experience with that as well.
There's actually a lot of, there's even that in CrossFit. Like there's a lot of people, and some of these people don't even promote programs, but people see them and think, oh, like CrossFit is how they got that way. And granted, there's some CrossFit Games competitors that they're jacked because of CrossFit, because they do 3 workouts a day and volume leads to growth. But then there's other ones that they used to lift like a bro. They used to bodybuild, you know, or even like, you know, I like this guy, so this isn't a shot at him, but like Nick Bear, people will look at him, the guy who owns BPN supplements, and they'll think like, oh, I got to like lift some days, do ultra marathon some days and be a runner. Like that's how he got there. And like, if you really dig through his content, he talks about bodybuilder turned endurance athlete, meaning he used to bodybuild and powerlift. That's how he got jacked. Now, even in Marcus Philly, same thing. He used to bodybuild. Then he did CrossFit. And like, if you actually compare his physique now to where he was when he was doing CrossFit or before that, he's actually way smaller. He talks about this. He's way smaller. So he lost muscle because that's not what he was focused on. He's focused on health, you know? So I think you have to look through it with that lens, with everything. And it applies to diet too. There's a lot of people who promote diets and they did not get, you know, the intuitive eating one is one that gets me all the time, because there's people who are like intuitive eating and you know, you don't need to obsess over macros. And it's like, well, that's weird, because you used to obsess over macros and bodybuilding, and that's how you got so lean. And now you just eat normal because you've already built a physique, and you're telling other people to eat normal. They haven't built a physique yet, you know, and there's a flexible way to use the macros to get there. So, I mean, that one, I hate that one. So I could go on about that, but, yeah, I think in general, podcasts like this are great. I think coaching, like what we offer is great because it allows us to show people like, hey, let's help you put your filter on, like in your lens, so that you can see through the bullshit and understand and really see what works and what doesn't. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Christina, welcome back. We did mention that you ran away for a second.
Yeah, it's so funny because I had literally timed the podcast perfectly with his nap, had put him down within 5 minutes of starting, which is like a parenting miracle. And then 30 minutes in, he woke up screaming his head off. We were at the 7-month sleep regression, so it has been quite an adventure. But I was going to chime in at, like Marissa, exactly what I was going to say is the swipe workouts on Instagram. And then I hear often from a lot of clients where they're like, well, I follow so-and-so and they can go out to a restaurant and they can order whatever they want. They can have drinks and they can eat intuitively and maintain. That's what I want to aspire to. That's what I want to do. And so I think that Cody made a really good point. It's like, well, they put in the work, they've macro tracked, so they understand nutrition, so they have the knowledge and the experience to do that. So it doesn't completely set them back. So just a lot of things, I think, just really putting things into context and helping people understand like the background and how people got to where they are now.
Yeah. Also, this is another reason why you should get AirPods, because you can run away and know what we're talking about and come back. But I also wanted to make sure we covered as well, I think a topic about, okay, so we want to quote unquote stay lean year round, and all that's really just a proxy for, we want to be able to live this lifestyle and we want to have a body that we're comfortable in, confident in most or all of the time. And I think that's totally feasible for pretty much anyone who wants to dedicate themselves to this lifestyle. And so I think one of the things that we struggle to accept early on in this journey, I know I was definitely this way for a while before I really kind of got my head on straight with things and embarked on this becoming my career. But, we want to make these changes, but only to see the result. But we don't want to do it for too long. And it's a big part of it is because we think that living a healthy lifestyle means chicken, rice, broccoli, that's it. And I can't enjoy anything ever again. And I have to sacrifice all my social life and everything. And that's not the case. And so I think a big part of it is, one, having a flexible approach to the way that you do things, which is what we preach. But I think there is, to an extent, also a level of acceptance around how do we change our lifestyle permanently so that we can sustain the results that we've achieved. And that comes with kind of changing who we are, the way we do things, and compared to the way we were before when we started this journey. And so, Cody, if you could speak to that, maybe even in your own life or clients, like how have you done that with yourself, and how do you also help clients achieve that kind of acceptance and discipline towards their life that they want to attain, but maybe they have trouble accepting that?
yeah, it's a really, really good, a loaded question. So I think I could go like a few ways with this. I think that, so number one, I think it's understanding what do you really want? A lot of people don't really sit down and figure out what the hell they're after and what they want. And a lot of us who have had clients come on board that are fairly new and we see a huge transformation. One thing I used to hear all the time was I didn't realize how shitty I felt. Because they come in, oh, I eat pretty healthy. Like, I feel fine. Like, I just want to lose some weight. And then they start getting into the lifestyle. And when they really commit to it, they're like, I feel so much better. I'm sleeping better. I have more energy. My digestion's better. I didn't realize my digestion sucked. I didn't realize how bloated I was. Like, all these things pay off, So sometimes you have to go all in to see the changes. And once you see the changes, like, those things just aren't like that you need discipline for. You don't really need discipline for anymore because it's a no-brainer. Like, you don't want those things. It's easier to eat healthy. It's easier to commit to a healthy lifestyle. It's easier to prioritize sleep when you see the benefits of it. So a lot of times for us, it's like, how can we really paint that picture for the client? Like, show them, like, I promise you the benefits are so much better than what's holding you back from getting there. And once you do that, you won't even have to rely on self-discipline because you'll want to do these things, So I think sometimes it's helping them understand that. And also the whole grass is always green on the other side. So, like, reflecting back to when you didn't have that. Cause I had a conversation recently with somebody who they, for their work, they'll end up at cafes with people every once in a while. And, it's been repeated that like sometimes he feels like he's missing out because he won't have the like this time it was monkey bread, but whatever, bear claw, whatever it is, like the thing at the bakery cafe thing. And we've had the conversation, well, like technically you can. He's like, I know, but I don't want to waste my calories on that because I'm like, he's actually training for Wadapalooza right now, so he's very focused and everything like that. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, but the person on the other side who is having it, who's making you feel like you're missing out on something and making you feel like the only way to be social and have fun and be a part of society is if you eat the shitty food, like, what are they thinking? Because on their end, they're overweight and out of shape, and they're looking at you like, God, I wish I had what he has in him to be disciplined, to go home after these long work days and still train and still follow diet. I would love to be in a leaner body. You know what I mean? It's always, the grass is always greener. You're always like, man, he's like, he doesn't even care about this stuff. He's so lucky. And he's over here being insecure, wishing that he had a body like that. So I think sometimes it's understanding those things and also like understanding the, like tying it to the outcome that you're after, because I think discipline in general, I just did a podcast with the author of Do Hard Things, and it was a really cool podcast because we talked a lot about this, and it's just doing hard shit just for the sake of doing it, because it applies to everything in your life. Anything life throws at you is going to be easier when you practice things that require discipline, willpower, motivation, any of that stuff, right? Anything that is hard, a cold shower, an ice bath, the assault bike, anything that you don't want to do, you do it, and then you're stronger because of it. You're more resilient because of it. Everything in life becomes easier. So talking about all of these things helps people so much, and also letting them know and understand how, like, the other sides of it, right? Like, so flexible dieting is one where I think people kind of get out of hand with sometimes, and it almost makes them like shame clean eating. Like, since when is it bad to say clean eating? It drives me crazy. Like, I'm not allowed to say clean eating. That means I'm like demonizing other foods. I'm just saying, like, this sweet potato is clean. It's a clean food. It's just healthy. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying the Pop-Tart is unhealthy. I'm not telling you not to eat it. Just reality. This is more healthy, And I think it's weird that it's a bad thing to want to eat more healthy foods and like feel better. And like, I don't know, but the point with it is not just the fact that it's healthier, has more nutrients. Anything that is not as processed, as packaged, has a more accurate food label, has a more accurate measurement in macro ratio, right? Like, we can track it more easily. So a lot of times I tell people, we can be as flexible as you want, but the less flexible you are, the more accurate things are. So when we get closer to a sticking point, when we're at a plateau, I'm going to lean on you to be a little bit more quote unquote rigid, which is really just more structured. It's more accurate, because I would rather be more quote unquote rigid and lose weight on more calories than keep being flexible, but have to lower calories, because we know the margin of error is so up and down. When you go get 2 scoops at Chipotle, what the fuck is that? Nobody knows. It's not really 4 ounces. Like, Steve's just behind there slapping. I mean, is he in a good mood or a bad mood today? And that goes for every condiment, So, like, teaching people why else this is good. It's not because X food is bad. It's because it's just hard to measure. And like, do you care more about the 30 seconds that you're going to taste that, or the years that you're going to have that physique? And again, we all know that there's ways to make healthy food taste good, and so on and so forth. But oftentimes, like, I eat chicken for dinner all the time, and I fucking love it. Dip it in some sugar-free barbecue sauce. That's like the clean, with some veggies and rice on the side. It's the ultimate bro meal, but I genuinely enjoy it. So I'm not doing it because that's what I have to do. I genuinely enjoy it. And it's the same reason why I eat a really low-fat diet. And a lot of people, I've tried to explain this multiple times, because fat's not bad. That doesn't make you fat. And there's many times where I tell clients, we have to get more fats. But on my weekends, I typically have wine, cheese, meats, like fats galore. So if you look at my weekly average fat intake, it's probably totally normal. And so this is the other side of flexible dieting. People see me during the week eating super bro, low fat, really clean. Well, I do that because now I have more room for carbs. I'm training all week. That's going to lead to me staying lean and building muscle. And then I eat less carbs in the weekend, and I pile up the fats, because me and my wife love eating cheese and drinking wine. Like, it's just what we do every Saturday. So when you explain it that way, it's the same idea of flexible dieting. It's just that during the week, my flexibility is having some reduced sugar ketchup on my egg whites. That doesn't sound very flexible to people, but They're like, how did you get lean drinking a bottle of wine to yourself and eating a bunch of cheese every weekend? Well, I eat like a bro during the week, because for me, flexibility is date night. I don't care about having fucking Snickers during the week. I want date night with my wife once a week when we can get a babysitter. I can get my daughter to bed, and I'm going to stay up late because I don't have to wake up 5, 6 in the morning for work, you know? So a little bit all over the place, but I think that to me, it always just comes down to kind of explaining the bigger picture. You know, like flexible dieting isn't one thing. It's not eating shit food inside of your macros. It's also not hitting your dead set macros. It's being within range of your macros. You know, it's not all the time. It's occasionally. So there's different levels to this. And I think same thing with the discipline. Like certain things require discipline, but only if you are telling yourself it requires discipline, because you don't see the value of the outcome that it's going to create.
I love that. I love that. And I think, you know, it also goes to show that being able to really have the physique that you want, have a lean physique year round, quote unquote, and just have a body you're confident in at all times, also just requires knowledge of context and being able to make decisions in context. Like, for example, someone might take what you just said about your weekdays versus weekends out of context and be like, great, I can be good 5 days a week and be a total asshole 2 days a week, and I can see progress. And that's usually not true for a lot of people. But the reason it's true for you is because you've actually done some level of like mental calculation of like, I'm not going overboard to the point where I'm eating till I'm sick, but I'm enjoying these foods and it's balancing out my total intake and calories for the whole week, so that I'm able to maintain my progress, push forward my progress, whatever it is that you're trying to do at that given moment.
Yeah. I want to add just a little bit more context, because I think that's important I don't want people to take it out
Yeah.
of context.
Yeah.
Sundays, I'm back to normal eating like a bro. Like, and there's 2 reasons for this. Number one, I'm not going to eat like an asshole twice in a row. Like you said, it's not going to be pretty. I've done that before. Number 2, I don't fast on Sundays. I don't pull back calories on Sundays. I go right back to normal. And the reason I do that is because if you're somebody who goes crazy on Saturdays and then you restrict too much on Sundays to make do, although the math adds up, I promise you by next Saturday, you're going to binge again. Then you're going to restrict, and then you're going to finally normalize things out throughout the week. You get back to normal weight, and then you binge again, and then you restrict. Like, it's a cycle. So I always tell people, like, I have clients all the time say like, oh, I fucked up on my diet yesterday. How should I counterbalance it? I'm like, you shouldn't. Go back to your normal eating habits, reflect on yesterday, figure out why you went overboard. Let's correct it next time. Otherwise, this is going to be a revolving thing, you know? And then the other side of that too is, like, just for people that's like, I eat about probably 2,700 calories a day. I usually eat like 5 meals a day. I'm more of a frequent eater personally. It's just how I like to eat. And on Saturdays, I usually sleep in a little bit. I'm busy. It's like a family day. So we're running my daughter around. If like there's like dump runs and chores and building shit at the house, I'm busy all day. Like, I really just generally eat less because I'm busy, which already stacks up my calories and especially my carbs, because I don't train on the weekend. I have more room at night, and I've been pulling fats back during the week to be able to afford that. And I do it intuitively because I have years of experience with my dieting and knowledge that tells me what is what, that I know what's overboard. And I know my own cues, right? So I don't go overboard. It's the same thing with people like with peanut butter. You know, they're like, I can't stop once I eat the peanut butter. And I always say, I was like, so what if we just get rid of the peanut butter? Like, what if it's just not in your pantry? And then it's like this mind-blowing thing. It's like, just fucking get rid of it. Like, you don't need peanut butter. Let's remove it until you can control it. So sometimes it's that too. Like, learn what foods are like the trigger foods so that you don't go overboard, because you'll just keep doing it.
I think it's important too, what you're saying kind of about client expectations too, because it's like you can't have your actions and your expectations be mismatched. So you can't have a client who expects to see fast and quick results, but then doesn't want to put in the discipline and is wondering why they're not making progress. So kind of understanding that there is a little bit of give and take, and it's totally fine if you want to take things a little bit slower to have that flexibility built in, just kind of having that expectation, hey, it might take you a little bit longer to reach your goals.
Yeah. And this is the part about being honest as a coach too, right? Like, I think that so much of the flexible dieting movement, which don't get me wrong, we implement, but along with that came this no stress, super easy fat loss approach, which to some people it is. But if we're constantly saying how easy it is, the second struggle or hunger or stress or anything gets in front of the client, one, you are a liar. Two, this is unexpected danger, right? They're not prepared for it. So we're very honest. And I tell clients all the time, like, hey, we're going to make this as easy as possible. We're going to try to eliminate the stress of dieting, especially the confusion part. But there's going to be times where you're going to think, why am I hungry? And the reason you're hungry is because you're dieting, you're in a deficit. That's part of it. It means it's working. Another part of it is you're going to have less energy, which means you might have some shittier days in the gym every once in a while. Might also not respond to stress very well. This is part of dieting. They are small sacrifices to make for the big win that you are after. And once we get the win, we can reverse you out so you don't experience those anymore. But just be prepared for it. So when it happens, you can just mentally go, oh, wait, no, this is happening because the diet's working. Great. And then you move on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And oh man, I had something that I was going to add to the last thing you said, but I can't remember. So we're going to move on to something else that I wanted to ask you. I want to rewind and actually ask you. So we talked about a little bit ago that people often don't realize how shitty they feel. And this is so true, right? We acclimate to what our normal is, and we tend to just be like, okay, now my baseline is here and my high is here and my low is here, versus my normal is all the way up here and my ups and downs kind of toggle around that based on my lifestyle choices and my habits. So I'm curious, how would you bring awareness to somebody who doesn't know that they feel like shit, that they feel like shit?
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes. Number one, most important thing, and I think this is a given, but just to put it out there, you can't change somebody who doesn't want to change. So this conversation is irrelevant. Like, you're not going to be able to convince them or show them if they don't actually want to change. For example, if somebody comes to you like, oh, my doctor's making me do this, huge red flag. Like, not like they should do it, but they don't want it yet. So you got to take a step back. Let's focus on your goals and figure out why you maybe want this before we get into that conversation. And the conversation of changing that norm, essentially, it's, first explaining how to assess it and what the ideology behind changing it is. Because this is the same conversation people talk about with like body fat settling points and your metabolism with metabolic adaptation and such like that. But it's kind of like a thermostat. So if you have air conditioning and heat, I'm going to turn it to 68. And then if it gets too cold, the heat turns on. If it gets too hot, the AC kicks on, right? If I want to make a new norm, like it's becoming fall here, so I'm going to turn it up to 70 soon. And now the AC and the heat got to recalibrate, right? We're trying to recalibrate you. So before it recalibrates, there's sensors that detect what the temperature is outside and inside, and then they make the decision, right? So we have to figure out the right sensors, which is biofeedback. So you may not know that you feel like shit, but let's record some of these biofeedback signals. Now, I can tell you this would be optimal and this is where you're at. It's not going to mean shit to you, really, until you do it, right? So the best approach, in my opinion, is to go, let's pick out what indicators we want to focus on. Then I'll break down the science as to why these can help us reset that norm and improve the way you feel, improve the way you look, improve the way you perform, digest, whatever your goals are. And then I'm going to show you what my experience has taught me. Because if I don't show you and tell you the stories of my other clients that have done the same thing and came out successful because of it, and then break down the science, what proof do you have to believe me? Otherwise, I'm just saying, like, just trust me, man, like, you'll feel better, right? I have to provide that proof. Now, usually we're looking at sleep, probably digestion and bloat. You could, some people, like, gut health is really popular right now. So people will go like talking a lot about bowel movements and all that kind of stuff. Unless somebody has a digestive issue, I don't see the need to dive down that path. Most people who are not coaches aren't as comfortable talking about pooping as we are. So there's really no need for it. And they don't need kombucha. They don't need probiotic. Like, the whole gut health thing has just been overblown, in my opinion. There's people who have issues, right? We've helped a lot of people in that realm. We've had a dietitian on staff that does that stuff, but the vast majority of people just don't. So let's focus on sleep. Let's focus on just general bloat or digestive health. And you just give me a ranking on a scale of 1 to 5. If I see a bad indicator, then I might start asking some more questions. Same thing with sleep. If you give me a bad ranking, then we can start asking more questions. But if you're sleeping 7 hours a night and you feel rested in the morning, I have no reason to keep going down that path, right? But we're looking for the thing to help them feel better. Usually for most people that come on board that aren't feeling great, or that their lifestyle is what's holding them back from losing weight, let's say, it's never just like, oh, you're sleeping 6 hours, you need 7. That's going to help. Because studies show the difference between the two is very minuscule. If you're a professional athlete, it makes a massive difference. If you're an everyday person trying to lose 20 pounds, it makes next to zero difference. Now, if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, yeah, you'd see a huge improvement if you slept 8, you know? But point being is we go, okay, let's look at sleep. Let's look at digestion. Let's look at overall stress. Let's look at mood and irritability. Let's look at performance and exercise in the gym. If there's none, let's just do it because that's going to help. Let's look at general activity. And then your diet, right? Your diet is going to play a big role in biofeedback. How is your hydration? How is your overall calories? What kind of nutrients are you getting? But when we can look at these just simple things, we can determine where we could see improvements. You know, could you have more energy? And I always tell people, at least other coaches, if somebody says it's fine or yeah, it's pretty good, it's shitty, guaranteed. Because if somebody asks me like, how's your energy? And I'm not like, I have great energy, then I don't have good energy at all. You know, that's just the reality, because it's the same thing with people like, oh, I eat pretty good. Yeah, I eat pretty clean most time. It's like, no, you eat like shit, you know it. And that's your way of deflecting, which is fine. Like, let's just start with where you're at. But really just pinpointing those different indicators and biofeedback signals and then going from there, right? Like, okay, if your energy is bad, what immediate things can I do to improve that energy so that they feel a quick result and a quick win that gives them buy-in, right? Then I'll work on like them getting 8 hours of sleep, or the things that all of us neglect typically, right? Like, let's focus on the big rock that I can just get a big bang for my buck. Dude, go on a walk every day. You do that, you're going to instantly start feeling better. You have more energy in the morning. It's like, if I can get them to do that, I get more buy-in. And then I'll do another easy one that gives them a big return. And then I get more buy-in, you know, and then you keep stacking from there.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, especially to your point as well, I think we're definitely talking to an audience of people that are at that phase of they either are contemplating change or they are actively pursuing it. But it's a great point to always hone in. I think the days of me trying to convince people of anything have really passed because it's just you can't convince someone of something unless they want to change their mind themselves. So I think keeping that in mind, for those listening, we have a lot of people who are pursuing their own health journeys that are listening to this podcast, and they often try to rope in, the husband, the wife, the family members, and that's obviously great because we want to influence people around us positively. But sometimes the best way to do that is not to convince anyone of anything, but it's to just live and be an example. And I've seen that in my own life really bleed into others because I don't really push anything in that way.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think somebody's asking about things, they clearly want help. You know, if they're curious, then it's a sign you can lean into it. Otherwise, just lead from the front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to kind of get us back on track here, because I pulled us on a tangent. So when we talk about being, in a sustainable, lean physique, maybe we have changed our body fat set point, and we have, and I say that with quotations, if you're not watching on video, because I really see that as a byproduct of like permanently changing your habits, and like you have changed the way that you live, which therefore changes the way that your body tends to stay. But what kind of changes would you say, and would you sum up, need to happen, mentally, environmentally, socially, relationally, for this to be a reality for people? Like, what are the changes that eventually won't need that discipline, but maybe to start that allow people to lean out, but then also stay there for the rest of their life?
Yeah, so I think that there's a difference between body fat set points and body weight set points. In my opinion, body weight selling points is much more real. It's typically a range, and there are weight related metabolic regulations. And they showed this in a case study where a guy basically did a prep for his bodybuilding competition with a weight vest on 24/7. He just walked around with a weighted shirt on, and he added weight as he lost body fat, and it allowed his metabolism to stay up. So he kept losing body fat and he didn't have to touch his calories. And the reason this happened is because he was basically tricking his body into thinking it was heavier than it was. And so it kept its maintenance calories higher, right? And during the reverse, he had to do the same thing. Now, that's not a long-term solution. It's a very impractical solution, but it goes to show that weight is a regulator of that. Now, there's people who have lost 200 pounds and maintained it for years. So it's not like the end all be all, but nobody does it. This is why The Biggest Loser was something that fell apart, because when you do it that quick, your body's going to rebound, right? And I think this is one of the problems with people promoting the recovery diet too much to gym pop individuals, because the recovery diet was designed for bodybuilders. So if you get absolutely shredded, you do need to reverse diet quicker at the beginning, because it's the only way you can reset some of your hormones to a healthy place. Otherwise, you can go super slow with your calories. Your body fat won't reaccumulate, and then you will keep your hormones suppressed, because part of the reason your hormones are producing is because of body fat stored on your body, not just what you intake through the diet. But a reverse diet, you can go slower. And I do think this is part of the process in doing it. So to actually answer your question, it's a matter of losing the body fat, but maintaining as much of your muscle and lean mass as possible, because then I would rather somebody lose, for example, 15 pounds instead of 20 if it took longer and they maintained more muscle tissue, because the greater the weight loss, the more difficult it's going to be to worry about this whole idea, right? Because your body weight is a metabolic regulator, more so than fat most of the time. So if we can just focus on muscle, or just focus on losing fat and maintaining muscle, I think we're more likely able to reset this point. But you got to do the diet properly, slow, steady, and then you're going to have to reverse diet. Probably slow if you're an everyday person, which means you don't take it so far that you get so lean that you feel like shit, your hormones go to shit, you miss your period, all those kind of things, right? Sometimes that happens. I've had many women lose their period because I've taken women, and mainly coaches, who want to get as lean as possible, or they're competing to that point, and that's part of it. If we can maintain their menstrual cycle while getting shredded, then we try, but it doesn't always happen. But if we can avoid all those downsides, just get what I would call lifestyle lean, right? Get to a point where you're pretty damn lean, but you're not absolutely shredded. We can reverse slowly, totally safe to do so. And you're more likely to maintain that body fat set point. And part of that means all the habits that you had to include that got you there, you kind of got to stick around to a certain degree, because it would be like me saying, I'm going to create a budget. I'm going to take my family to Europe next year, and I'm going to create a budget, and I'm going to have my accountant set up a financial plan for me so I can have my money going to the right places. I'm going to have a budget so I don't spend certain things. I'm going to have a secret account to store money in while I save. And then I go on the vacation, and then I stop doing all that stuff, but I'm confused as to why I'm still not saving money. Well, because I let my budget go. I closed the savings account. I didn't have the goal, but two, if I don't do the same practice that got me there, I'm not going to be able to save money again. So you have to still drink a lot of water, eat fiber, eat whole foods, exercise regularly, get your sleep, do all those things. The only thing that changes is the degree at which you need to do those things. So you can get away with drinking a little bit more often. You can get away with a few more nights of less sleep. You can get away with some days where you missed hitting your step count. You can get away with eating more food on a day-to-day basis because your calorie intake's higher to reverse properly. But most of the same things are required to sustain. And I think that's something that people don't want to tell anybody. Like you can intuitively eat and maintain your physique, but you got to learn how to do that first, right? And that requires the habits that got you there in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the intuitive eating usually ends up being what you would eat when you're tracking macros, but just like not weighing it and not logging it in an app. And that's like, I think where people kind of get it wrong, where someone posts an intuitive day of eating and they're like, this is how I'm maintaining my weight. And it's like all carbs, because they just can get away with that for one day out of 7 during the week. And so it's putting out the wrong message, but I think we've harped on those people enough. But yeah, exactly. You have to continue those habits. You have to accept those changes permanently into your life, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be miserable, and you can have more flexibility with it. And I love that point, because it's just like training, training to maintain your muscle mass. You can technically get away with, what is it, like 1/9 of the amount of training volume that it took to build the muscle to actually keep it. So like, that's not a lot. And so it might not be the same proportion with your habits and your nutrition and your lifestyle, but generally speaking, Christina and I often use the analogy of a volume dial. If when we're dieting, we turn that dial up to a 9 out of 10, and we're hitting things pretty accurately, we're being more rigid, and we have less flexibility overall because we're pushing towards a goal. What we do when we finish the diet is we don't just turn the volume off. We turn it back down to like 50, 60, maybe 70, depending on, what we're trying to maintain. And the body weight and body fat percentage and the physique we maintain is a product of where does that volume dial sit. If I turn it down to 30, I'm probably going to gain a little bit weight and like be a little bit less happy, energetic overall, with my body, but maybe that's where I want to be and I'm okay with that. Or if I want to keep it leaner, keep it tighter, I might keep it at 75% or 80%. And that just might be where I want to stay and live. And I think that's an individual choice as well, as like, okay, you've attained this. Now to maintain it, there's kind of a range of where we can sit, but it's an active choice of like, okay, if I'm not going to turn it all the way to zero, what am I okay with continuing to live with, and the habits that I need to continue to execute on to stay there. And for certain people, it's certain trade-offs, I think. So that's the analogy we often like to use.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think at the end of the day, not just with your intake, but maintenance, literally with your intake though, maintenance is a range. It's not a set point. So if you calculate your maintenance to be 2,000 calories, it's somewhere around there. But that means when we're intuitively eating, and if we're off a little bit and we go a little bit extra on something, we're probably going to hit more steps. Our body's going to crank up thermogenesis. That's what happens. The body's pretty fucking smart. And if we eat a little bit less by accident, we're probably going to be a little more lethargic subconsciously and not burn as many calories. But it's always kind of calibrating and regulating. That's why creating a deficit is more difficult than maintaining.
Awesome. Well, I think we just have probably one question for you, which is a question that we ask all of our guests on this show. Christina, you want to take the final one?
Yeah, sure. I'm always like a little skeptical because I'm like, man, I have so much more I want to say, but I don't know if you guys talked about it when I was gone. But no, I think that's really good. And I feel like that's actually a really good transition into our next point is, we always ask all of our guests is if you could give someone one tip on how they can lead a more sustainable, healthy lifestyle, what would that tip be?
Embrace the process and don't focus so much on the outcome. I think, there's a really good book called Infinite Games, and it has nothing to do with health and fitness, but it talks about people who win the infinite game, which is essentially never losing. I mean, it's just continual growth, right? These people are process oriented. They're not outcome oriented, which means the person listening right now who is after the scale saying 135 pounds, like, stop focusing on 135 pounds, start focusing on your habits, start focusing on the process, start focusing on gaining strength, start focusing on leaning out, start focusing on like what you look like in the mirror every day when you wake up and the confidence you feel and the energy you have. Like when you do that, not only will time go faster and you'll get that result quicker, but you'll be more patient. And when you're patient, your habits are more solidified. You don't fall off as often. You will literally win way quicker. And you won't be frustrated. I mean, I think that's really the key in everything we're saying here is just learning to embrace that process. Like and there is a study, I believe it was 1/8 volume, which I will say I don't completely agree with. That's what the study did say. I would probably say it's probably a little bit more than that. I'd give it like a 1/4 because I could go into that. But long story short, if that's the case, if I only need to train 25% of the time to maintain where I'm at, I can technically do it intuitively, and I don't need to continue studying because I know everything I need to know about energy balance. Like, why am I still doing this shit? It's because I love the process. So in anything in life, if you find what you love about the process, you will win. I think in marriage, it's the same fucking thing. Like I gamify that process because I've already got the girl. I've already won, I could get lazy and be like, well, I can just maintain this by barely doing shit. Or I could gamify it and try to hit on my wife all the damn time and get her to fall in love with me over and over and over again, or get her to want me all the time. That's a game, but that's a process. It's a chase. And I love that. And so to me, that's the answer to everything. It's the answer to my business success too. It's a game. And I'm trying to win the game every fucking day. I'm not like, I don't have I need to make this much money at the end of the year or this much money before I die. Like it's just a growth game, So I think that to me is the best tip you can apply to anything in life, but especially with your physique, because if you're going to do it the right way and you're going to sustain something long term, like it's a requirement.
Yeah. Two things. I'm actually reading that right now. I'm in the middle of that book. It's great. One thing that I wrote this down as you were talking earlier in this podcast, and I almost like, I don't want to like correct your words, but at the same time, what I gained from what you said, instead of not thinking about the outcome, what I wrote down was remember the outcome and live in the process. Because a lot of what you said earlier was, remember what you're actually trying to do, like visualize it. What do you actually want, and dig into that. And I think it's, we often juxtapose process focus, outcome focus, and we say you have to be one or the other. And it is very, very, very important to be very process oriented. But at the same time, I really love what you said about remembering the outcome, because it's kind of like when you feel lost, or you are about to fall off, or you're going to forget, why you're doing what you're doing. I think that that's also a very important grounding tool as well.
I agree 100%. I think that the outcome is your North Star. You don't know where the fuck you're going if you don't have that. So I agree. I think that if people put the outcome on a pedestal, or they don't even understand the real outcome, again, so the 135-pound goal, is that really the goal? Or do you want your husband to look at you different? Honestly, because I know like my goal has nothing to do with weight. Like I talked about this in the post. I was joking, but I was kind of dead serious. Like my goal is to like mow the lawn with my shirt off and like catch my wife checking me out from the kitchen. Like that's a realistic goal. She doesn't look out and be like, oh damn, he's probably like 171 pounds, like at all. But that's where like I think people put the outcome on a pedestal, but it's not really what they want. So I do agree with you. However, I think if you don't learn to embrace the process and focus more so on the process, then I think you get impatient. And I think it's a really, really frustrating process, because every day you wake up and you're not there. So every time you realize you're not there, you're just pissed off, rather than realizing every day you wake up, you're in it. And that's a win, because you're still in it, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way you really screw this process up is if you completely quit.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen, because there were so many little nuggets, and I think that our audience is really going to enjoy this. So we really appreciate having you on, and this was really great. And I think that we loved being at the IFCA event and being able to hear you and hear you talk about how you coach and how you're very client-centered and everything. So it's been really great. But if any of our listeners want to find you, where can they head?
Yeah, thank you for that. So tailoredcoachingmethod.com has everything. We're on like episode 800 something for the podcast. We have videos, hundreds and hundreds of blogs and research reviews, all kinds of free stuff. So go check out that. That's where everything lives. And then on Instagram, at Cody McBroom.
Awesome. Well, guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit. Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.